checking to see if there's other streams open. But yeah, so that's really weird.
I think I've been talking to myself.
I think you may have been.
Yes. Oh, I thought I must said hello to everyone. Well, I've just pressed the button. It should be live.
Yeah, you've appeared now.
I've appeared now. I will start all over again.
Sorry about that.
I'm not used to this. Thank you very much, Julia.
No problem. All right, speak to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to the Bald Explorer Live. Not sure what happened then. I thought I was live and I've been chatting away merrily to you and I've answered your comments that have come through. And apparently I wasn't live. Only the stream, the chat stream was. So that's very strange because I've already been reading the book quite merrily. And then I had a phone call from Julia who said, you know, you're not live. And I said, no, I am because I've been chatting to people. But anyway, there we go. I haven't read the last few comments, which I now realise says that I was asleep. Not used to it, you see, been away. Anyway, so let me start all over again, which does seem rather weird. Hello and welcome to the Bald Explorer Live. You didn't see this screen then, I guess, and you didn't hear the music, which I was playing thinking that we were live. But anyway, not to worry. We're already 12 minutes into the show. I apologise for that. So sorry. So let me start by saying a few hellos to everybody and make sure we're all there. Hello to Diana Rolfe, who says, "Hi Richard. Decided to wait as I forget more often than not." Yes, I did say I've said hello to all of you once, but obviously not really live. To TurboStream, hello. To John F, to the lovely Julia, to Phil Hammond and Mary. Good afternoon, Richard and Julia. Can I say your lovely jumpers were absolutely brilliant, and I need to order another set or another two would be fantastic. Willing to pay to have the jumpers made. They were brilliant, and they look so good on camera as well. So I need to talk to you guys about having some jumpers made. So that's really... Morton, hello to you. To Philip Hammond, said that. To Diana Rolfe, I've already said it. To TurboStream, to Linda Kane. Has he misplaced... Oh, I'm just reading it. Has he... I was reading all this time. And I saw in the corner of my eye all the comments coming up, thinking that you were... I'm thinking, oh, you're a lively bunch. I've only just started reading. Anyway, I'm glad the lovely Julia gave me a tinkle. Isn't it silly? We're on chapter 8. And we're actually halfway through the book. I can't believe it. This chapter is called How Hard Is It to Love the Fly? And I've already read the first few pages, but I wasn't live. Welcome back to the world of COVID. Yes, however you say it. It's sorry about that. I feel such a prune. Anyway, here we go. If you're enjoying the show so far, give us a thumbs up. Right, let's crack on. I'll start again from where I was. If you remember, we're following the story of Walter Wilkinson, who's carting his Punch and Judy booth around Sussex. And the last I remember was that he had pulled up at Hayshot, I think it was. Let's double check that. Hayshot somewhere. And there he met... or Grapham or somewhere around there, he met up with his wife who had arrived at a station. And I think the station must have disappeared in the beaching cuts. But there we go. Right, so this is the chapter 8. We were on the road by 10 o'clock with the sun shining, following the road to Dunkton through the woods with towering bushes of rhododendrons under the dark trees. The pale lilac flowers looking oddly civilised in the wild wood. Grassy paths led from the road among the bushes to the heathery wastes, and from the tops of the hills one looked out over the sunny country into the green basin of calm fields, or between large upstanding elms of a stretch of downland, misty with the sunshine. It was so wild and open, so uninhibited and like a forgotten common that it was only natural to escape from the sun a little, to turn a few yards into the woods and sit in the shade of the trees. In such moments, great things have come to pass. A Keats might have caught his inspiration there. A Buddha might have seen his vision of nirvana. Another Newton could have been indicatively bumped on the head by a falling pine cone. The scene was wholly set for delightfulness, for a waiting upon wisdom, or even for such a small thing as a refreshing and innocent rest. But all that came to us was a crusty old man who peered at us first while he hid, very badly, in the bushes. Then he advanced, scowling, looking at our boots, squinting at our property, and with particular hatred at the barrow, and he examined us as if we were obnoxious criminals. He turned our innocent pleasure into a heinous offence, and informed us sourly that we were trespassers who could be prosecuted. We apologised diplomatically, but not at all sincerely, for it is not a pleasant thing to contemplate that landlords prefer to have foreign birds like pheasants in their woods rather than English people, real live human beings, who might be poets, philosophers or scientists, meditating and on the point of saving the world from some of its botherations. We soon forgot the little incident on the pleasant road which continued its course up and down the hills through the woods, and we followed the heathery way by swaying beech and scented pine until we came to a bridge over a small clear stream. By this time the seriousness of life, the crisis, the weight of ancient custom and all the pressures of ready-made procedure, the absurd octopus of the desire for infinite riches and possessions which is strangling the life out of us nowadays, all the trammels of a bloodthirsty, class-thirsty and riches-thirsty civilization had faded away. We were in the sunlight and the breeze among the trees. Pretty colours, bright lights and loveliness surrounded us. A murmuring music from the gracefully swaying trees lulled our senses with contentment. We were children of Arcady, abandoned to the charm of living. After half an hour's indulgence in the sport, we realised that we were playing the improvised game of boat races, pitching a pair of sticks into the stream on one side of the bridge and rushing to the other side to see what piece had emerged first. We were happy and unashamed that such childish grace had descended upon us. Recovering our dignity, we pushed the barrow once again to meet a gypsy woman with a baby in a shawl, and to sentimentalise a little over her brown face and her bold poise, and the bold poise of her figure, which opened up for us a vision of all the wild and ancient life behind them. And then at the top of the hill we met the gypsy man. We were travelling humbly on foot, imitation gypsies, but living hard and simply. The gypsy, the real article, was seated in a car, comfortably smoking a cigarette. We thought that he had hardly deigned to notice us, but a sidelong glint from his dark eyes had taken us in, and he did not neglect, as we passed, the attempt to strike a deal, to offer us a bread knife, a very good, strong one, for a shilling. "Only a shilling, lady." It must have been the gypsies who inspired us to leave the road again, to turn up an open glade, and to sit under another tree and eat some lunch. But it was not long before another janissary of this world came to move us off from that particular piece of earth. Earth! It was only sand and some meagre growth of wiry grass. But more than earth, it was property, and judging by the stern character of his unfortunate servant, the owner was prepared to cut off our heads if we didn't move away from it. Pushed on to the road, there was nothing to do but follow it. And we passed on by fields and under great trees to the charming cottages of Dunkton, a minute human settlement at the foot of the hills. There seemed no possibility of a performance there, where the few cottages and farms were a mile apart, but we decided to camp there and rest before taking the road over the downs. But the farm could not give us a pitch. The fields were down for hay, or the pastures were full of cattle. After this experience, and with the remembrance of the uncomfortable keepers, we looked round at all the expanse of fields and woods and grassy hills, feeling very shut out and confined to the hard road. How ridiculous that we could not set up our 6 feet of tent in all that spacious display of camping ground. Just checking that we are still live and that everything is all right. I think we're there. Thank goodness. A roadman was inquisitive about our doings, and so simple a matter as camping out for the night presented no difficulty to his robust nature. "If it's only for the night, why, I should camp anywhere. You'd be welcome to come to my little place, but it's a mile away and it's very rough road to get there. You'd hardly do it with your load, and 'twouldn't be worth a while for one night. I should camp anywhere. Look over there, at that little orchard at the foot of the hill. You'll be all right there for the night. Camp anywhere, I should." Those sturdy words put encouragement into us, but we were not hardy enough rascals to make use of the orchard without permission. "It belongs to old Alfred Turner, what lives away back a mile of the road. You go past the pub and you'll find him in the cottage on your left." The pub that he's talking about presumably is because I did a whole series on Dunkton. I'm just trying to remember the Cricketers. The name of the pub, the Cricketers, is where he's referring to. So I know exactly where they are now. With the friendly interest of the roadman and his introduction to Alfred Turner, the village began. It'd be interesting to know if there was an Alfred Turner actually in the village. The village began to come to life for us, and leaving the barrow by the roadside, we retraced our steps along the lane, past the black and white gates of the park, which must be Burton Park, and rounded the corner by the Cricketers' Arms, there you go, with its painted sign and great chestnut tree. That's true, there is one. The inn carries the full-length portrait of a cricketer, for in this village over 100 years ago was born James Broadbridge. I thought it was James Dean. The best all-round of his time. He was a character of interest to all the pedestrians because he was not afraid to use his legs and walk for what he wanted. Walking could not have been no effort for him, no extraordinary feat that required thinking about, or that necessitated a peculiar costume, or a particular diet, or a paraphernalia of maps, pyjamas, and toothbrushes. Walking, to him, must have been as natural and as subconscious as breathing, for in order to obtain good cricket practice, he would simply walk off to Brighton, a distance of nearly 30 miles. His mind conceived the idea of playing cricket at Brighton, and his legs automatically took him there. A pretty instance of how the mind can sustain the physical powers. With similar sustenance, we walked the road until we came to a man with a lorry. "Alfred Turner," said he. "He lives at that cottage over there. Why, there he is. Hi, Alf! Hey, Alf! The lorryman waved his arms excitedly. The old man looked at us suspiciously as we came into his garden. He was a tall, old man, grey and bent, and we approached the patriarchal figure cautiously and politely, not wishing to prejudice our chances of getting a pitch. It took him some time to consider the question, but in the meantime Winifred had diplomatically brought some jelly babies from his old wife, who had... Oh, Winifred must be Walter's wife. Yes, that's right, because I remember... That's it. Winifred is is our hero's wife. It took him some time to consider the question, but in the meantime, Winifred had diplomatically bought some jelly babies from this old man's wife, who had a few bottles of ancient sweets in her cottage window. "Well, you see," said the old man at last, "the awkward thing about it is the gate of the orchard is locked. You're welcome to camp there for the night, but the gate's locked, and how can we do without a key? You could get over here." Here he looked doubtfully at Winifred. "Or you could get through the wire." The lack of a mere key presented no difficulty to us, and accordingly we were given the freedom of the orchard. And now, as the walk back had been very hot, and as there were tea tables in the cottage garden, and as there were a great many Sussex cottage gardens, we thought that the barrow, a mile away on the lonely road, might look after itself a little longer while we drank tea among the cottage flowers. The old grey beard hovered about, dying for some gossip. "I saw you going by," he remarked. "I said to my granddaughter, I shouldn't be surprised if that's not a Punch and Judy." He was pleased at his sagacity, and settled down in a chair to say that he always looked for a Punch and Judy whenever he went to the seaside, and that he liked to have a good laugh. He discoursed largely upon the surrounding landowners, who he hazarded would not welcome campers. "We get these hikers coming here saying that keepers have prevented them from walking on the downs, but I always tell them the keepers have no right to interfere. There's always been a right of way there, and I walk anywhere, keepers or no keepers." He spoke in respect and awe of the old landlords, but the newcomers he dismissed as only business people. But then he was an old aristocrat himself. His father's farm had been in the family for generations, and his wife had been born in that very cottage in the garden of which we were sitting. Speaking of his ancestry conjured up other days to his mind, the slow, steady times of handicraft and old-fashioned farming, and our age and methods came in for spirited criticism. A firm from the north of England had descended upon the village one day with several motor lorries, and a few days afterwards had departed, leaving 3 or 4 completed new houses behind them. "Houses? Houses?" shouted the old chap. "More like matchboxes, I should say. I wouldn't care to live in them, wouldn't feel I had a house about me." Interesting. 1920 or 1910, I think this was. I can't remember exactly when this was first published, but interesting. Matchboxes. How amazing. The local farms, according to him, were deteriorating because of bad methods. Look at all them lime kilns going to waste along the hill. Farmers used to burn their own lime. Now they buys it and goes in for these patent manures. Silliest thing they could do. 'Tis uneconomical, and they burns up the land. Interestingly, I did a video where I walked past a lime kiln at Dunkton. Probably one of the ones that he's talking about that remained unused. The barrow had not been stolen during the hour or so of absence. It was standing on the wayside grass where we had left it, unmolested, and I suppose it would be a strange thief that would want to acquire a Punch and Judy, or a vehicle so unusual and distinctive. We pulled along to the orchard, found the lock gate, of which the padlock and chain were the soundest but most necessary parts, for we lifted the whole thing off its hinges and entered by the wrong end. And what Winifred thought of the orchard is this. There was something sinister about the orchard, which we felt the minute we got inside was almost evil. The trees were all blighted, their leaves withered and shriveled in the brown brittleness, as if they had burned to death under some curse, and from the branches grubs of moths hung down on invisible threads, falling down our necks and touching our faces. Underneath there was a rank growth of every kind of plants that in an open field would have rejoiced the heart, forget-me-nots, thyme, buttercups, sorrel, ox-eyed daisies, spotted orchids, pink campions and ragged robin. But here they were dwarfed and deformed, and the air so full of the scent of sour herbs mingled with those decaying vegetable matter, and of elderberry trees, that all felt thick and stickly. The old trees were covered with lichen, and even one or two young ones, protected by wire netting, gave one no feeling of youth or strength, but only of a hard struggle to keep alive. It was like the atmosphere of an old house, whose unsavoury past cast its gloom on all the inhabitants, and it cast its gloom on us too, until we emerged into a little plateau that was bright and open under the sky, and from which we could see, over the top of the orchard trees, the shining fields and the blue downs beyond. We pitched our tent quickly, and the little lane leading to the old lime pit just behind the hedge at our back. I know exactly where they are now. I just realised exactly where they are. Interesting, though, there isn't a orchard there now, but I wonder if there had been. Interesting. I think for those that are looking on maps, as you go to the very south of Dunkton, there's a very sharp curve, and then the road goes up Dunkton Hill, and it winds its way up. And on that corner, as you start to rise, there's a path that takes you into a wooded area, and the beginning of the Dunkton hangar, and the little lane that they're talking about that goes up to the lime kiln. I know exactly where that is. And you walk up there about 200 yards, and then it doubles back on itself as it zigzags up. And on that doubling back is where the lime kiln is. So I do know exactly where they are. Are we still live, and are you still enjoying it? That's the question. Yeah, so we pitched our tent quickly with the little lane leading to the old lime pit just behind the hedge at our back, and behind that wood, from which strange rustlings and cracklings, and sometimes the quick stir of some animal among the bushes, gave eerie and unexpected notes in its orchestration of the sound that filled our ears. But even up here, where everything was so clear and fresh, the flies from the witch's patch below came, not in ones and twos, but in crowds, collecting around the tent poles at the opening and the exit in horrid, thick, buzzing masses. Such flies, houseflies, horseflies, mosquitoes, midges, daddy longlegs, gnats, greenflies, hundreds of flies, bees that were not bees, wasps that were not wasps, insects no bigger than the point of a pin with a bite that made one wince, to say nothing of the spiders and ants and woodlice, grubs, moths, and an elegant-looking beetle that had nothing to say either to us or his fellow citizens of the insect world, but pursued a determined and speedy course from one end of the tent to the other. In vain we took towels and drove these creatures away, some falling dead on our shoulders or in our hair, as in a wild attack we hit the top of the tent with severity. Others flattened to the tent roof, but most sent murmuring into their own element, the foul air of the fouler orchard. In vain we used the general effective cassipodol, whatever that must be a product. In vain we smoked cigarettes. They were indeed some witches' creation, and it was only when we packed up the next morning and could turn the tent inside out that we finally got rid of them. I was driven to a frenzy to write the following poem. How hard is it to love the fly? I often ask the reason why such creatures were invented. With all this vast expanse of sky and all the world over which to fly, why should we be tormented? In hope we dab upon the skin odoriferous ointments from a tin and lotions from a bottle. In vain we suffer smells we hate, enwrapped our heads and suffocate. They care not jit nor tottle. We watch them come and congregate, inevitable as our fate, each moist and misty morning, such inoffensive seeming spots, miraculously tiny dots, careering on our awning. How delicate is nature's art, but thought it severe by a smart that makes us wince and cry. Outrageous spite, confounded blight, most horrid, hated, loathsome sight, the abominable fly. We dash forth from our sleeping sacks, seize a towel, and with wax hit out both right and left. And some we drive beyond the door, and some lie prone upon the floor. Of life we hope bereft. Then back into our sacks we creep. But do not think, dear friends, to sleep. The fly that lay upon the floor, that fly that passed out through the door, has each returned with dozens more, with hundreds, thousands more. And some are there that are buzz or some there are that buzz or bite, and some that do both buzz and bite, and some that buzz and bite and sing, and some that buzz, bite, sing and sting. And then, as well as flies as these, mosquitoes, spiders, ants and bees, wasps, daddy longlegs, moths and fleas, ladybirds, beetles, aphids, sorry, got confused by the PH in the word. Ladybirds, beetles, aphids, earwigs, centipedes. But please forgive me if I stop to swat this bumptious, buzzing, bang, blue dot. Now, of course, no longer a complete fly. That amazing poem. That's such a fantastic poem. I don't usually go for poems, but I really like that. And I'm going to have to copy that out and repeat that elsewhere. That's beautiful. I love it. The joy of camping. Absolutely, Alan Sandell. Whew. Right, so we're on chapter 9. How are we doing on the time? We're all right. Selim has nothing to sell. On the map, it all looked very inviting. This road from Dunkton going over the downs and up to Waltham and Eartham, up to upland villages in the heart of the hills. There we thought we'd be able to pitch our camp, give performances, shop comfortably and travel on and on, all the time in the quiet downland. The question of shopping was getting imperative. This charming and endearing county of Sussex had given us a fright with regard to supplies. There had been no shop at Selim, and we had looked to Dunkton for replenishment of our stores, but Dunkton, being well supplied by motor services from larger places, did not think it worthwhile to keep a shop either. Beer, bullseyes and teas were in a plenty, but the ordinary groceries all came in daily by motor vans. I wonder if Amazon was operating at that time. Our stock of provisions was at low ebb, and we decided to push on up to Up Waltham and enjoy an orgy of shopping there. The sun burned down over the steep woods to our high plateau over the orchard, and we packed up leisurely in the great heat. It was as much a sunbath as a packing, and taking twice the usual time over the hundreds of little jobs to be done, the morning hours passing over us unwittingly. What a great many things must be done in packing up a travelling camp, compressing it into one small box and squashing all the extras into a roll to go on top of the box. There is first the toilet, then breakfast, and of course the washing up, by which time the best part of 2 hours has gone. After this, the stove has to be dismantled and packed inside the pots. The food must be gathered together, sorted and packed as carefully as possible. Then there's the rubbish and the newspapers to be burnt, and by this time the whole camp is in such a transital state of dishevelment, of shoes, sleeping bags, shaving tackle and bags spread over the grass, that you're a bit sick of it, and you take a walk up the green path under the bushes, which leads you on ravishingly until you come to a high ledge and a gap in the trees, from where you look out over the great weald. Here you sit in a cool breeze, and the earth is so lovely, the field so green and calm, the wood so still and stately, that it seems a crime to be fussy about your little human affairs. And so another half hour, or perhaps it's more, is passed in your devotion to nature and the search for her secrets. Many a perplexing problem is thus solved. They simply fall away from you, and you can stand and wait with the patient earth and these old green hills for their great mysteries to look after you. I'm not sure I read that very well, but anyway. But all the same, the packing has to be done, and we descended once more to the muddle of blankets, ground sheets, tent pegs, sleeping bags, hats, coats, shoes and books, shaking, folding, rolling and strapping, until at last the barrow was heaped up with all the paraphernalia and ready for the day's march on the road again. During all the evening and all the morning we had not seen a fellow being, although the main road and an automobile association scout were only a few yards away. We'd been alone with the sun and the flies all that time. The hillside was so remote that we might have committed a dozen crimes or achieved a score of miracles without anyone being the wiser. And it is a queer reflection that in this hectic age one can find such loneliness and look out over so much country with so little sign of human habitation. We pulled through the sickly orchard and regained the road, which, with one passing car and the sight of a house or two, seemed to be the hub of the universe. Dunkton Hill soon absorbed all our energies. Above the villages rise Dunkton Down, one of the highest peaks in this range of ant hills, but the road climbs easily and gradually for all ordinary traffic, but not too easily if you have a barrow to pull. That last remaining gentleman of the roads, the Automobile Association scout, saluted us at the offset, and the car folk stared at us in astonishment as we won our way inch by inch up this broad black way through the rich hanging wood. Lucky for us that the beechen shade was so cool that every few yards we could abandon the weighty barrow and sit on the mossy bank, or to stand under a grey beech trunk and look down on the wide country below the hill. It was hard work, but we had our reward. Ascending that hill in a car must leave only memories of changing gear, of a sudden jerk, a grating change in the rattle and the roar. But for us, there is always the gap in the beech leaves, and the vision of a far below green field with a rusty pond in it, a quiet house standing in the sunny trees, and hidden ringdoves cooing above the branches. One of our rests was spent in the company of a real roadman, the genuine article. He sat among the grasses on the bank and eyed us curiously as we approached. He was a hard, healthy old chap, with a bright complexion and scrubby whiskers, a dirty sack over his shoulder, and a peeled stick in his hand. As a preliminary advance, he came out with the time-honoured phrase, "Can you tell us the time, mister?" And we had, for our part, asked for information as to the road ahead. He knew all the roads in the countryside and described to us meticulously, with shouting enthusiasm, all the ways we didn't want to go. They all sounded fascinating, illuminated as the directions were, with barns and inns and big trees over the roads and signposts at the corner and tracks going over the hills. He himself was for Chichester, 11 miles away. He walked that distance hundreds of times in his youth, but now that he was 69, he was dubious of getting there. He began to soliloquy, as well he might, having no breakfast that morning, with 11 miles to tramp and 8pence to find on the way for a bed. As he grumbled, the great cars passed up and down the hill, entirely heedless of this ragged bag of misery. The price of one of their cushions alone could have set him up for a month, and as they passed, he fixed a hungry glance upon them with his sharp, beady eyes. "They're no good for you," he shouted. "They wouldn't dare to give you a lift. They wouldn't stop, not if you were lying dying in a ditch, they wouldn't." Of course, he was looking for work. He got a bit of droving to do now and again, but looking for real work was hopeless for him, a stranger everywhere and 69 years of age. Work? You might just as well sit on the roadside and eat your fingernails. A vivid expression which could only have been born from moving experience. He stumbled ahead of us, a sturdy figure, bagged with 2 jackets and waistcoats, his pockets bulgy with bread and a billy can, his boots curled, writhing and full of holes. From us, who had a sneaking admiration for him, he only gleaned a few coppers, and poor work it must have been for beggars nowadays, with all the pennied travellers so secure with their pennies in the swift and shining chariot. I'm not sure I read that. And poor work it must have been for beggars nowadays, with all the pennied travellers so secure with their pennies in the swift and shining chariots. We trudged on and reached the top of the hill with the sense of a morning well spent. The road passed out of the woods into the bare pastures of the upper downland. The great green sweeps of grass opened to the wide, clear sky. The wind came freshly over the heights and blew away the last remnants of the sickly orchard and the festering flies, which set an edge to our appetites, but did not furnish us with food. There were some buildings at the foot of the hill, and we rushed upon them clamorously for eatables, but could only get windy materials, and not even a biscuit to eat. The cottages seemed larger and the rooms more spacious than the usual country cottage, and in our hungry and pessimistic mood, we quite understood the phenomenon when it was explained that these handsome buildings had been originally built not for working people, but for dogs, and the kennels they were still called. Standing on the porch was a homemade cricket bat, a stout piece of ash fashioned in the round-like primitive tools of the game. "Do you play cricket?" asked the housewife. "Oh, yes." "Do you play cricket?" we asked the housewife. "Oh, yes," she replied readily. "I play with my husband and son when I have time." And so the ancient game is maintained. From those games on the rough grass outside the cottages, that son, perhaps, will emerge into a worthy successor to the famous Jim Broadbridge, who had batted and battled for Sussex 100 years ago in the village at the bottom of Dunkton Hill. I'm just looking to see. We have a fair old trek to go. Down the valley between the green mountains, for so they seemed with great width of pasture, we wandered up to Up Waltham, a faraway settlement of 2 farms, some enormous, handsome barns, a letterbox, and a lonely, lovely church on a hillside, a simple, spired building of brick and plaster, standing under great trees, old and thick with that pretty sentiment of the country worshippers and hymn singers, a venerable grandfather of a church that could tell good tales of births and marriages and the deaths of its generation of children. And in about 30 years from that point, it was going to be one of the crews of the Dam Busters, I think, crashed in nearby on the Downs and are buried at that church. Or there's a memorial in that church. We made a video there a year or so ago. We were tempted to quit work for the day and pitch our tent in the restful and dignified influence of these aged hill farms. They had stood there for centuries, weathering all the silly changes of fashion, the hectic clamour of production and profits without end, occupied only with producing simple food as they grew shabbier and more beautiful. From that great patience, we thought some steadying elixir might have penetrated to our fidgety modern lives. And we were fidgety, for there was neither shop nor any prospect for a show, and we were drawn on by the idea that Eartham, a few miles away, would furnish us with one or other, or possibly both. And I'm going to end there, I'm afraid, because I think there's a bit of a thing, and that seems to be a good place to call a pause. I'm sorry about reading earlier and not being live. Yeah, such a lovely church, tiny church full of oxeye daisies. Very nice church, and if I remember rightly, still got the whitewash on the outside. Yeah, we a transital state of dishevelment. Yes, Morton's picking up on all the lovely phrases again. They are, absolutely. Even the Beatles are in the woods. Oxeye Daisies. Wouldn't that be a lovely name for a folk group? Yeah, the Oxeye Daisies. Don't really know what to think about it. It's not going to be a great day of school, and I have a great day. Sorry about that. Lovely as usual, Richard. Nice to be back with the readings. Thank you very much. Yes, so tomorrow should be back again, Tuesday, with a continuation of that chapter, and I think we'll rattle through this book by the end of the week if we're very lucky, which would be good. Would be difficult to find a book to follow this one. Don't finish it too quickly, says Linda Kane. It's lovely, and it's more pleasing, I suppose. Not only is the writing absolutely beautiful, but knowing the location and thinking that he went to these places, I would like to continue my in search of Walter Wilkinson and his booth and revisit some of the places. Anyway, that's it for today. Going to be a Vogue show tonight with the lovely Julia on. I'm thinking that I may reduce the Vogue shows to one a week, but I'll talk about that in the Vogue show tonight. I'm feeling a bit lost with the Vogue show, but very excited about the Bald Explorer and our recent adventures. Anyway, thank you so much. And thank you for your kind words. It's very, very kind of you. It's nice to get back into the reading. I do like reading, and I'm slowly getting a bit better, I think, slowly. The more I read out loud and the more I do it live and actually live as opposed to thinking I'm live, the better it is. Right, that's it from me. Take care, one and all, and I will catch up with you later on or tomorrow. Bye-bye for now. Bye-bye.